So I'm watching this porn film the other night, and they're panning the couple that are going at it, and on the bedstand there's a Coke can.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, wow,
Product
are
placement.
they getting so specific that they're actually putting Coke cans, product placement, in porn films? I don't know. Or was it just an accident? I don't know.
It just came from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yes.
For the 9th time.
Uh-huh.
I can't stop watching that movie. I'm obsessed with it.
Okay.
Really, Quentin Tarantino should take out a restraining order. That's how obsessed I am with it. 9th time.
I wouldn't use the word restraining order, Mike. I know. Sorry, but
9th time, added footage.
Yeah.
A little bit at the beginning, a little bit at the end.
Yeah, I
In
heard there's
between
a
was the same
director's.
film.
I heard there's a director's cut.
Yeah, but I'll tell you something. I'm obsessed with that period of time. I was 12 years old in '69. To me, it was the happiest time of my life. And for some reason, I really identify with that film. And, we all know now that it's basically, it's called Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So when people get pissed at me for giving away the ending, I always think you're an idiot. But, I mean, if only things had gone the way they went at the end of that film.
Yeah, if only things had gone the way they went at the end of of Inglourious Bastards.
Right.
Right? And he loves to do that. He likes to take history.
And how did that film
it.
open? Once Upon a Time in France. So everybody, when it's called Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, all these people are freaking out over the ending. And I'm going, well, you're a moron. You should have known going in. The other thing that bugs me is when somebody's 22, 23 years old and they're walking out ahead of me going, yeah, the last 10 minutes were great, but the rest of it was boring. If you don't know the backstory, you shouldn't be going to see the film. He fired 2 extras who didn't know the backstory on the Tate LaBianca murders.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that really fascinated me today. Anyway, Mark Breslin's here. You know what? I'm going to start this way. I thank you, and I know my brother, if he was here, would thank you, because neither one of us would have gotten to where we were had you not provided the platform.
Well, thanks,
and I
Mike.
say this with a question that comes afterwards, which is something I don't get, which is why a lot of guys hate your guts. I have never felt a moment of that, and I'm going to be honest about it. And I would be, I'm always honest, and I would be regardless of what the situation was. But you took something, you built it, you gave people a platform, and it was up to those people to use that platform to, leap into whatever they wanted to do. And if they didn't do it, that's their fault. That's my attitude toward it. I don't know how you feel, but I really would like to hear.
Well, I never thought that I could make anybody a star. Certainly not in Canada. But what I could do is I could give them the tools to become a star, if that's what they needed to do. And I could give them a bit of a safety net while they were doing it. Paid work, nice clubs to work in, that kind of thing. It wasn't the end.
But you never for a minute thought it was going to go from a Church Street basement to what it is today.
No, never. What I wanted to do was meet girls I wanted to punch above my weight when it came to meeting girls.
Right.
And I knew if I'd become an accountant, that wouldn't have happened. So, you get into show business and all of a sudden you're a foot taller. Isn't that interesting?
Well, you know what? The thing with comedy is, though, it's not a way. I've never thought it was a way to punch above your weight with girls, because girls are either pissed off or intimidated, I find, when it comes to that branch of show business.
No, I never had a problem.
Really?
I was fighting them off for years, for decades. I'm serious. And I don't want to say that because it sounds like bragging, but...
Man, you sure kept your private life private.
I did.
You know how much conjecture there was about you?
I know. Everybody thought I was gay.
I didn't. I'll tell you, I didn't.
Why did they think I was gay? Well, I dressed nicely, I was short, I was really into musical theater, and I had a gay roommate. Oh yeah, the gay roommate. The wonderful Bruce Bell.
Bruce Bell, who's still alive.
Yeah, he's doing really well.
Don't say it like he's dead.
No, I'm just saying he's really doing well.
But was he your roommate or was he your butler? Because...
with a certain kind of person like me, it's hard to tell the difference between a roommate and a butler.
Right.
Bruce helped me out a lot domestically because I never was good with that, and I was just too busy. Bruce loved the whole thing about chafing dishes and parties, and this is stuff I have no interest in. But Bruce was great with that. Just great.
I always thought you were asexual, just so you know. It's just kind of a compliment compared to the other.
Well,
yes.
I would like to line up all the girls who would disagree with the asexual.
But you didn't bring them into the clubs. You didn't really have them hanging off you. You didn't bring them with you when you went into the clubs. I never saw you with a woman in the clubs till Karina, your wife.
Seriously,
Never.
You were not paying attention, my friend.
Well, you know what?
You were not paying attention.
Like many
And let me
others,
tell you
I
where all the
averted my eyes when you walked into the room. I was afraid to meet your gaze.
And gays, again with the gays. The girls almost all came from the audience. I met them all. They were all
Seriously?
audience members. They would come up to me afterwards. Oh, what you're doing after the show? I would go out with them after the show, and I would date them, and one thing would lead to another. But I would always date them in multiple racks, and I would have. Remember, we had clubs all across the country.
Right.
No, I had a very vigorous social life.
Were they shiksas?
Mostly, yes, but not exclusively.
Any sportses?
Yes, I had a very, very close relationship with a fashion designer in Chicago. She was wonderful. And the funny thing about her was she was really kind of svelte, but she made clothes for plus-sized women. So when she would go on TV shows, she would dress in a fat suit. And,
no kidding.
Yeah, and wear her clothes on top of it, so nobody knew that she was really skinny.
Wow. Now, did you ever introduce her to your mother?
My mother was dead at the time. She was not alive at the time.
Okay.
She was gone already.
I feel like an asshole now. We can cut that out.
No, you don't have to cut that out.
But would you have, like most Jewish boys, would you have been afraid of being a black girl home?
I brought home Gentile girls. That was bad enough. I think at that point they would have expected anything. So
How religious were your parents?
they were not religious at all, but they believed in the rituals of Judaism. In other words, we don't have pork in the house, and we have 2 sets of dishes.
No shellfish.
And no shellfish. And on the high holidays, we go to synagogue. But I didn't believe in any of it. You see, my sister got really sick, which I think you know, with multiple sclerosis halfway through their lives. And at that point, they wondered how a God could allow such a wonderful woman to be so sick.
Right.
It's the same thing as the Jews who were in Auschwitz who said there was no God in the camps.
Right.
And,
They felt the same way.
yeah.
You, as a result of that, your sister got a lot of attention, right?
My sister did get a lot of attention, but remember, she was already 35 when this happened.
Right, because she was older than you were, much older.
My sisters were way older than me. That was my younger sister was 19 years older, and my older sister was 24 years older. So she's now 90 and living in a home.
You're the only guy I know who was in the same situation as my father. His siblings were all between 19 and 25 years older than he was.
And what did it do for him?
You know what? His father died when my dad was 3.
Oh, I'm sorry,
My grandmother was a very severe woman, very severe. And you know what? I think my father went from being henpecked by his mother to marrying my mother and being henpecked by her. And I think that's why my brothers and I have had some unsuccessful relationships, because we have a tendency not to be told what to do.
Yeah.
And
I get that.
Yeah. And I think you were single till you were how old?
58.
Which is shocking.
Wait. Actually, that's not quite true. I had been going out with Karina, and we were an item for at least 10 years before that.
She's a lot younger than you.
She's 18 years younger than me.
Right.
My mother was 15 years younger than my father. So there's a bit of a
family
history to that.
Yeah. It works better when the man's older and the woman's younger. Older woman, younger man never works.
No, Mike, I have to tell you, there's a point where it bends. And here's the point where it bends. It sounds great when your wife is 20 years younger until you're about 65 and you start getting sick. And then she has to assume a bit of the role of the nurse. And they don't like that.
Yeah, but that hasn't happened with you.
What do you mean? I'm not sick?
You're not sick.
I will be. Everybody
Eventually.
gets sick. Everybody gets sick.
Yeah, but you're past 65 now.
I'm 67.
Yeah. And you're not sick.
I'm not really sick, but I don't have the energy that I had when I was 40.
Yeah, but she's what, 48, 49?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you know what? She's going to hit menopause soon, and that's the worst time ever.
What do you mean soon?
For a man.
What do you mean soon?
Should be 4 years,
No,
4 or 5 years.
What do you mean soon?
She's not in it now. Are you serious?
I don't know.
Isn't she good German stock?
She's good German stock and good Scottish stock.
Oh, a combination of the two.
Two of the most practical peoples on earth, and then there's me, the Jew dreamer.
Right. And how did her folks feel about that, the Jew dreamer?
Well, they're not anti-Semitic, but like I say,
even after meeting you.
I know, it's astounding because I'm not just a Jew. I'm the Jew you don't like.
You're Jewy. Yeah, you are.
When I was in Oakwood,
you're very Jewy.
When I was in Oakwood Collegiate,
that's where my mother went to high school, by the way.
There were lots of Jewish kids, but I was the one that was picked on. Why? Because I had the biggest mouth.
Right.
That's why.
Right. So that came before anything else.
Before
You had the big mouth before anybody started giving you a hard
I
time.
had a big mouth when I was 5.
Yeah,
I was
so did
always
I.
mouthing off and telling people what I thought. And it was considered cute then, but it was not so cute when I was 12 or 15.
When you got to high school.
Kids didn't like it at all. But then I transferred and I went to Forest Hill Collegiate, and everybody was a
Was
Jew
the
with
same way.
was
Everybody
a Jew
was
with
Jewish.
a Jew with a big mouth, so I
Right.
fit in very nicely.
You were like Howard Stern growing up in a black neighborhood, but you were growing up in a Gentile neighborhood and going to a Gentile school, so it was a different deal for you.
Yeah, but it wasn't pleasant. I did not like Oakwood. It did not work for me, and I was really glad when we moved.
Yeah, it's amazing to me that you were there because that was the waspiest of high schools.
Oh, it wasn't waspy. It was very...
Well, when my mother went, it was.
It was really multicultural. It was ahead of its time. It was what everybody wants Toronto to be.
Right.
It was Greek. It was black. It was Korean. It was just everything. That didn't work for me. Ironically, when I went to a school that was 99% Jewish, I blossomed.
You fit in immediately.
Yeah.
Who'd you go with? Anybody we know?
What do you mean?
Forest Hill. Who'd you go to school with there? Anybody we know?
Nobody in my grade. I'm sort of the famous guy out of my grade.
Right.
Susan Cole, who writes for Now Magazine. She does all the movie reviews and book reviews. She was in my year. In fact, she was president of the student council. Who else?
Well, Mandel went there, right?
No, Mandel never went there.
Where did he go?
Northern, not Northern. It's up in Bathurst Manor. I can't remember.
Okay, so
what
he
it's called.
wasn't downtown.
He was not a downtown kid.
Oh, okay. I thought he was. I don't know why, but I always thought he was.
No, he's Bathurst and Shepherd.
Okay. Now, Joel Axworthy, who started with you.
He was there too. He just wasn't in my grade. He was a year younger, but he lived across the street. That's how I knew him.
Okay, so so people know he started, I guess you guys started it together.
Yeah, it was just a chaff. It was just a laugh. We didn't know what else to do. We needed to have some fun. We didn't think it was going to be a job. And in fact, as soon as it became a job, Joel was gone.
Yeah, because he's someone who scrupulously avoids success.
Well, he's the Maynard Krebs to my Dobie Gillis.
Yeah.
You know, and he's fantastic. Work. Remember on the show. Yeah, he's very much like that.
Yeah, he lives in Walkerton.
Walkerton.
Who the hell? This was after the poison water.
No,
he went there, wasn't it?
No, he went before. But the amazing thing is that he stayed. Most people would leave if you didn't have family.
He's got to be the only Jewish guy within like 25, 30 square miles.
No, there's actually a Jewish community. There's a Chabad, one town over in Hanover.
It's got to be a kibbutz. I mean, what the hell is it?
There's a lot of like sort of leftist, organic Jewish guys who went up there after their marriages failed and taught school.
Yeah. So Hanover's got a Jewish...
Yeah, he's good. It's got a Chabad in it and it's got a Starbucks, but not in the same place.
Right. What the hell would attract a Jew to a place called Hanover?
I don't know. I really don't know. But my father had a business in Walkerton, so I know Walkerton quite well.
There's nothing there.
I know. It's a poverty pocket.
Yeah. It's basically, that's what it is. It's the kind of place where I used to go do gigs for you, one-nighters, way out. It's the kind of place where I stopped to fill up, and that was it. Maybe a can of pop from the gas station and gone.
Even after all these years, I'm sure there's not much there. No. Joel has an amazing rent, and he lives across the street from the jail.
Yeah.
So there's a view. Is what I'm trying to say. But Joel is one of the funniest people I've ever known.
So he can feel Schadenfreude.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but Joel is one of the funniest people I've ever known, and
he's funny and strange at the same time.
Yeah, and a perfect guy to get me to do what I wound up doing. Yeah. And to this day, if I have a new idea, I always check it out with Joel.
Even now?
Oh, yeah. We're very close. I still see him once a week.
Yeah, yeah. Now, you remember who the first guy was that you ever put on stage?
No, but I can tell you that in the first group of people that I put on,
they
were all people from Harborfront, remember? So before I started...
Because you were the director at Harborfront.
That's right. There was still a year and a half of me doing things at Harborfront, and that's where I met Horowitz, Larry Horowitz, Paul Mandel.
What a prick, by the way. He used to introduce me as Pat Bullard's brother before I got onto regular nights.
He's just... Oh, can you...
I know. No, but this was amateur night when Larry used to introduce me as Pat Bullard's brother and not even give my name.
So who was there? Larry Horowitz, Brian Nazimok, Steve Schuster, Marla Lukowski, Sheila Gostick, I'm good. Rick Moranis, and a lot of people don't know he ever did stand-up, but he did for a year, and boy, he was brilliant at it.
Yeah.
But he hated it.
Yeah, he likes sketch a lot better.
He hated it. He told me, he said, Mark, it's like begging for laughs.
By the way, when's the last time you saw him? Because he's disappeared.
Well, you know what happened.
He lost his wife.
He lost his wife, and he decided his family, bringing up his 2 boys, was more important than show business. He made enough money that he didn't have to worry. He loves living in New York. And that's basically what he did. I almost met him again. We were going to get together. I was in New York, and for a week, this was about 7-8 years ago, and we were corresponding back and forth. I'll meet you tomorrow, and then tomorrow became the next day, and it never happened.
Yeah, that's too bad. He's sorely missed. He's one of those guys. He's like Eddie Murphy, who's now having a resurgence. He could come back tomorrow, and there'd be a lot of jobs for him.
There certainly would be.
He's amazing. He's one of the... Martin Short always struck me as the guy who will... of all that crowd, Martin Short, to me, should have had as much success as Rick Moranis, but basically he's a day player in 1,000,001 shows. That's how we know him. A couple of failed movies, but he's the guy who's always... I will call him this. He's the #1 talk show guest in the world.
Yeah.
That's what he's always been to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I often wondered how a guy like that would feel about guys like Moranis and John Candy, who went into the stratosphere after SCTV. Because Short should have, too.
Short should have. And he may be more talented than all of them put together, frankly.
Yeah.
He's an odd duck.
If he was in the 40s, he'd be the #1 song and dance man.
Yeah. I mean, if you watch him with... Have you seen the show he does with Steve Martin?
I haven't seen it, but I heard about it.
It's excellent.
Yeah.
And he can keep up with Steve Martin and maybe in some cases surpass him. I thought his one-man show that he did on... It's a Broadway show, but I saw it here. I thought it was terrific.
Yeah, so did I. I thought it was terrific, too. But he is more of a theater guy than he is a movie guy.
Yeah, I guess that's part of the issue.
Yeah, I mean, Candy took off like nothing I ever saw. And Moranis, too, when it came to Ghostbusters and what was the other one? Family something.
Well, I'll tell you something. I think that one of the problems with Marty is that he always acts like he's in a sketch. And so there's always an element of overplaying everything.
Over the top.
And that's really hard to do as a lead.
Yeah. Yeah,
so
exactly.
maybe that's it.
Who's your personal favorite of all the guys that came through the clubs?
Oh.
And it doesn't have to be a big name either.
Well, if you're talking about Canadians, Mike MacDonald.
Yeah.
There's no question it was Mike MacDonald.
Yeah.
And if you talk to most comics who were around during Mike MacDonald's heyday, they will say Mike MacDonald. If you went to Howie Mandel, he'd say Mike MacDonald.
Yeah.
I'll bet you Jim Carrey would say Mike MacDonald.
And a guy who suffered from Martin Shortness. Because he should have been bigger.
But I think that the issues are different in Mike's case. I mean, first of all, Mike is not televisual. He's not a good-looking guy. He's waxy and he's sweaty on camera, and he was never quite right. He looked like an army sergeant. Now, if you flash forward another 20 years to now, that stuff isn't as important as it was 20 years ago when you had to be a leading man, a la Jim Carrey, to get those kinds of roles.
You know who reminds me of Mike MacDonald? Michael Shannon.
Yeah, Michael Shannon.
That guy is got the same shape head. He's got the same thing where he can give you a stare and scare the shit out of you.
Yeah.
And Mike was that way too.
Yeah, on stage and off.
Oh, both.
Yeah.
Both, and he used to pull some stunts that I could not believe. I mean, there was stuff he did to other guys. I remember one night we were sitting in the green room, and he ordered a bunch of Chinese food. He was headlining at Yorkville. And Brad Lyons and another guy were there, and I can't remember the other guy's name. And Mike ordered all this Chinese food, and he was eating the Chinese food, and he'd eaten about half of it, and he couldn't finish. And those two guys were sitting there licking their lips. You know what they were like. They never had any money, those guys. They slept on everybody's couches. And Mike dumped it all in the garbage right in front of me. Right in front of them. And I thought, man, you got to hand it to him. Like, it's not a character. It's really him.
No. But he was also really difficult to be with for a while because of the heroin.
Yeah.
And that made him impossible. And I remember one evening, Kinnison was in town, and of course he knew Mike, and we had a little party for him, a dinner party, just at Joel's parents' mansion place. It was beautiful. And we ordered sushi because everybody loves sushi. So Kinnison was there. I was there. Joel was there. Joel's cousin, Sherry Capp, was there. And we were waiting for Mike, and we're waiting for Mike, and we're waiting for Mike, and we're waiting for Mike. Mike finally comes in, and you can tell that he's like whacked out. And he goes, "Where's the wasabi?" And somebody said, "Oh, gee, they didn't send wasabi." No wasabi! No wasabi! And he just left.
Really?
He just walked out, stormed out.
Wow. Yeah, he was
impossible.
It was
for
a
a
long
while.
period of
Really
being a rough guy to be around.
It was a tough time to be his friend.
Yeah.
I had to once go down to Cherry Street, like the beach, Cherry Street, and pay off these drug dealers. He owed money to. He owed 25 grand. I got 25 grand together in a suitcase and had to give the money to these guys.
Yeah, because they don't care who you are.
No.
They don't care who he was.
No, they want their money. But to Mike's credit, he paid back every penny.
Did he really?
Yep.
Wow.
Paid back every penny.
Wow. I did not know that. That's a pretty incredible story. Yeah, he was, when it came to clubs, there was nobody better.
Nobody better. He would do 4 hours and as a feature and then come back the next night having just watched the Oscars and then do a new 4 hours based on the Oscars.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah, he was. He was prolific as hell.
Yeah.
He really was.
Yeah.
He was a great writer.
Yeah.
Fantastic writer. And, today he'd probably do a lot better because he'd be getting Netflix specials.
Yes, and today there wouldn't be quite the same emphasis on looking a certain way. I mean, let's face it, when somebody like Patton Oswalt can be a star, things have opened up for men.
That's right.
And what they're supposed to look like.
Yeah, you don't have to be, let's talk about the guys who were unbelievably handsome.
Your brother.
My brother, Sean Thompson.
Yes.
Who else? Eric Tunney.
Yeah.
And it was like 2 strikes before they even opened their mouths.
And Jim Carrey.
Yeah, Jim Carrey was good looking when he wasn't doing rubber face.
Yeah, Jim Carrey's a good looking guy.
Yeah, but I remember those 3 guys, Eric in particular, the guys in the room would hate his guts before he even opened his mouth, audience.
Do you think Howie Mandel's a good looking guy?
Yeah, he can be.
For a Jew. Why don't you say it?
For a Jew.
Just come out and say it,
For a sheenie.
Curly hair,
he's all right
hook
for a
nose,
sheenie.
But he's cute.
No, but I always thought that was a bad thing. I always thought it was a bad thing to be too good looking. Even Carson had a bit of a quirky appearance. He wasn't matinee idol handsome. And when you looked at the guys who really did well, like Brenner and stuff in the beginning, these were not traditionally good-looking guys.
No, and if you go far enough back to the Ed Sullivan Show, you'd see these warty Jews on doing comedy every week, and they certainly weren't attractive.
Take a look at Woody Allen. I mean, who was more of a nebbish-looking guy than that?
Exactly.
But the brilliance, was transcended everything.
Well, that's one of the things that Woody opened up.
Yeah, you're right. He probably is the guy.
Yeah,
he probably is the guy.
That Woody opened up.
But these guys, like my brother and Sean, and I used to think it all the time, man, these guys are too good looking. They're too good looking. And when they walk out, right away the guys in the crowd hate them. And the women are more enthralled with their appearance than what's going to come out of their mouth. And I saw that happen a couple of times with a couple of guys.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where you went, holy shit. And for me, the other thing was when I looked at guys coming out, I always went, you know what? Guys would say, oh, I got to be a headliner. I got to be a headliner. I got to be a headliner. For me, it was always, I got to be an MC. I got to be an MC. I got to be an MC.
Well, you were preparing yourself for the role that you really wanted.
Yeah.
Right? You knew what you wanted.
I knew what I wanted. I read that David Letterman had done that he always hosted at the Comedy Store because that's what he wanted to do. And you and I both know that when the rubber meets the road, the thing that's most important is how you listen. You got to have a quick mind to do it, but you got to have open ears. You got to listen to what people are saying to you. Otherwise, it's contrived and it's bullshit. I always hated contrived bullshit. I remember guys who came through who were supposedly completely improv, and then I'd go see them 2 nights in a row, and the person in the 3rd row the next night had the same occupation as the person the night before.
Nobody likes when I remind people of this, but Robin Williams was that way. Everybody thinks he was a big improviser, but the truth is, he just knew how to make it look like it was fresh.
I'm glad to hear you say that because that was the first person I saw doing it, and I thought, there's a trick.
When he was doing that comic relief in Los Angeles, I was there that night, the night before, and I got a call from the guy who owned Igby's. It was a weird little club in the West Side, Jan Smith, and he said, Mark, come down tonight. It's unadvertised, but Robin's working out his set for the big show tomorrow. I said, oh, yeah, okay. So I go down, and he does his stuff, and he's playing with the audience, and he's doing everything, and it all looks like it's off the top of his head. Then Smith says to me, why don't you stay for the second show?
Right.
We have room. I said, okay. So I stay for the second show. It's exactly the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly the same.
I saw it myself.
Yeah.
I know.
Doesn't mean he's not a good comic. It also means he's a good actor because he'll be able to make it look fresh.
And that's what he used stand-up for. I always thought. And then he went back to it in a big way.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, I'm excited about Eddie Murphy coming back out.
I just saw the Dolomite movie
I thought
last
it was
night.
great.
I thought it was great, too.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. And I'm looking forward to him doing stand-up, too, as long as he doesn't go on an apology tour. I don't want to see him apologizing for stuff he did 30 years ago in Delirious.
I don't think he'll do that.
I hope not.
No, I don't think he'll do that.
You know, because Chappelle and Bill Burr just did everybody a huge favor. And I know how you feel about this shit, too.
Yes. Well, yeah. I was on CTV defending Chappelle, and they were surprised. And I thought this was interesting. The producer was surprised I would defend him. They said, we thought you would stand up for, the rights of the underprivileged. And I said, in real life, yeah.
Yeah.
But not in art.
No.
Art is different. Art's
and he has no issues with anyone. I mean, you read the reviews. It was the same thing when you brought Louis C.K. in.
Yeah.
I'm reading these reviews, and if I had believed these reviews, I wouldn't have gone. Because there was not one review of Chappelle's Sticks and Stones that contained more than a grain of truth. And there was not one review of Louis C.K. at the Richmond Street Club that contained even a grain of truth.
They had already decided what to say before they saw the show, and we know that.
Right. I mean, this guy, Louis C.K. comes out for the first 15 minutes. He goes through the most humiliating period of his life in a self-deprecating fashion. And that's not what I read. What I read was angry from beginning to end. I didn't see an ounce of anger in the guy. And I was there the same night you were there, and I'm sure you were there more nights than I was.
I saw every show, and every show had the same tone to it.
Yeah. What do you think you think the big names coming out and giving a fuck you to people is going to work, or how do you think this whole politically correct bubble is going to burst?
I think that the culture has shattered into a million pieces.
Yeah.
And I think there's a market for everybody. And there's a market for Hannah Gatsby, and there's a market for Louis C.K., and there's a market for me, and there's a market for you, and there's a market for everybody.
Yeah.
And I think that's the trick: is people will match up the market that suits them with the comic that they are. That's the future. That's the present, in fact.
The thing I noticed you did the night that I saw Louis C.K. was you were taking the cell phones off people and putting them in those bags.
That wasn't our choice. That was his choice.
Was it his?
Of course.
Because I was going to ask you if you were going to continue with that.
No, that's his choice, and it cost him a fortune. He had to bring that technology in from New York City and fly all those people in to administer it.
You know what, though, Mark? I'll tell you, if the stuff gets cheaper, I wouldn't mind seeing that in every club.
Well, we will, unlike many clubs, we will go up to people and say, please put the cell phone down. The comic owns this material, not you.
Right.
If you ask the comic and he wants you to do that, okay, that's fine with me. But you didn't ask them, so put it away.
Now, you're going to be a big voice in this. They're talking about officially making comedy a Canadian art form. What do you think?
To me, it's show business.
Yeah.
Once you start saying it's an art form, it sounds really pretentious, especially for an art form that more or less revolves around you grabbing your crotch. So I think this is all a fake. It's a Band-Aid. It's a lot of things by a lot of comics who are not all that great to try to get some kind of action going for themselves and level the playing field with the really good comics. I still say, you want to make a living in this business, write better jokes.
Yep. And what it comes down to is you're writing, producing, and starring in a 15-minute, half-hour, 45-minute, 1-hour movie, TV show, whatever you want to call it. And depending upon how good you are, that's going to determine how much you're going to get paid for doing it.
Generally. But let me say this about Canadian. This is not a new topic. This issue about Canadian culture has been a topic since I got into the business back in 1976. So I've decided there's only two things that would really help Canadian comedy, and outside of Band-Aid solutions like, we'll call it an art form and we'll give out some grants, which is not going to help a lot of people.
Well, you know what's going to happen with that.
Well, also, who's going to make the choices, which is also
well, you can only give money to grown-ups. Right. I mean, these guys, you know what's going to happen with that dough.
So there's only two things that can really help.
Yeah.
Really, because some things cannot be solved, Mike. They just can't be solved. So one thing would be is if we could somehow magically import 100 million people into the country,
Right.
which would create enough of a marketplace that it would create a tipping point and lots of people could make a lot of money. You see that happening in the UK. The second thing would be for the government to institute some kind of tax preference or some kind of
Like the Canadian Film and Television Fund.
right, that kind of thing, specifically for comedy. That's not going to happen because now economists like to think a dollar is a dollar is a dollar, and why should a plumber pay for a poet? It's stuff like that.
You know, it was healthier 20 years ago when the Comedy Network launched.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, comics were getting stuff. People like me, people were getting stand-up specials. And in a lot of ways, 21, 22 years ago, I think it was healthier than it is now, the business itself.
Things have evolved in some ways, but they've also evolved in others. For instance, the internet has changed everything, and you no longer have to live in a particular place to necessarily become rich and famous.
Right.
There's no reason when I watch some of these shows that start on the internet, podcasts or anything like that, why they can't happen in Canada. But
Well, look at Lily Singh, right?
yeah, although I don't think that show's going to last.
Neither do I. I don't think it's very good at all. I think she's in way over her head. And it's the old story like American Idol when it comes to singers. To me, it's the same thing as Last Comic Standing.
Yeah.
Many of the guys I see on Last Comic Standing, particularly this year, I worked with many times over the last 20 years. These are people who paid their dues, but, American television, they want you to think these guys suddenly came from out of nowhere.
Right.
But I have no use for people who haven't paid their dues. I'm sure you don't either.
No, I don't like people who haven't paid their dues, and there are a lot of people who are chomping at the bit, and they're kind of scratching at the walls of the people who have put a lot of time into this business, including myself.
Remember Vince Fluke getting a deal? Remember that guy?
Oh, vaguely, yeah.
Getting a deal from CBS with 10 minutes, and we used to go, Fluke, more than just a last name.
Yeah. Well, they don't do that anymore, of course.
Yeah.
They don't even give deals to people who are good. It used to be that you'd go to Just for Laughs and you had a chance of walking out a millionaire.
Right.
That is no longer happening. Their networks are not doing development deals at all.
And it ain't coming back.
No, that's not coming back.
No. It's just like reality shows. Networks figured out a way to do a show without paying talent.
Yeah.
Basically, that's what comes out. Of course, you can give $1 million at the end of the season. You just saved $46 million on salaries.
But like I say, some problems are just not solvable.
No, and they're never going to be.
Like I ran into former Mayor David Miller at a party.
Yeah.
He was no longer mayor, and I said, "Okay, you're not mayor anymore, so you can tell me the truth. What can be done about the traffic?" He said, "Nothing."
Good.
I said, "Nothing," because as you make improvements, more people are poured into the city, and it just sort of obviates.
Man, they're putting 4 more lanes on the 401, and it's not going to do a thing.
No.
It's inconvenient now while they're doing it. They're going to open it, and you're still going to be stuck at the same entrance you're stuck at every day. It's a good point. I got to talk to you a bit about Joan Rivers.
Yeah, sure.
First of all, how'd you meet her?
I didn't. She gave me the job without really meeting me. Here's the story.
Yeah, because you got to tell me that, because that's pretty amazing.
The story is a good story, I guess. What happened was this. Do you remember Marjorie Gross? Does that name ring a bell?
Jonathan Gross's sister.
That's right.
She was a writer on Seinfeld.
That's right. So Joan gets the gig to do the first show on Fox, and she's working on it for 6 months or whatever lead time they gave her, and she's at the hairdresser's. This is how random life is.
Yeah.
And she's sitting beside a woman who says, "Joan, I understand you have a new show. You have to put my niece on the show. Her name's Marjorie Gross. She's originally from Canada, but she works down here now. Can I give you a tape? Can I send you a tape?" Joan says, "Yeah." And Joan was always a person who would look at a tape. So Joan gets the tape. Joan is on her exercise bike at home. I know these details. The details make it even better. You can imagine her.
People don't realize what a big-hearted woman she was.
Yeah, she was terrific, especially to her writers, and that's a rarity.
Yeah.
I watched how you treated your writers. Anyway, so she's on the exercise bike. She's going up. She's watching Marjorie on a show here. It was a CTV show in the morning. It was a morning CTV show. I can't remember what it was. Anyway, I was on that show afterwards.
It was Canada AM. It had to be.
It was Canada AM.
Yeah.
So after Marjorie's finished, they had me on the show talking about Marjorie and why I liked her and what she was doing. So Joan didn't get off the exercise bike to turn it off.
Yeah.
She just let it keep going, and then she watched me and she went, "Who's this guy? I thought I knew everybody in comedy." So she calls up Howie Mandel, who she knows, and says, "Who's Mark Breslin?" And he says, "Well, he started young, he's a really interesting guy, blah, 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 blah." She goes, "Oh, okay." And then I get a call out of the blue on a Friday night in the summer. I was going on stage, and somebody said at the club, "Mark, there's a phone call for you." And I said, "Oh, no. I'm going on stage." "I think you should take this call. It's Joan Rivers."
Yeah.
"Really? Joan Rivers?" You know, my first thought was that maybe I had taken a joke from her, and she was calling me to chew me out.
My assumption.
You know, I thought maybe subconsciously I stole a joke.
Yeah.
No, she goes,
I don't think subconsciously, but go ahead.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah. No one could ever do my material. No one ever stole my material. No one ever would want to. So she says, Mark, it's Joan Rivers. I heard so much about you. I got great things from Howie Mandel, and I saw a tape of yours, and I'm wondering if you'd come to Los Angeles and you would work for me. No, sorry. She said, "Come to Los Angeles and we could talk about comedy. I have a new show coming out." I said, "Yeah, sure. When would you like me to come?" "Can you come next week? I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Oh, great, wonderful. I'll turn you over to Dorothy. Dorothy is my assistant. She'll set it up where you want to stay and when you want to come, and I'll see you soon." And I told everybody that weekend I was going in to give Joan Rivers advice, and they said, "No, you're not. That's a job interview." And I said, "No, it can't be a job interview. I've never worked in television on that level before. I wouldn't get that kind of a job." They said, "Mark, it's a job interview." I went in, and I went to her house. Sure enough, it was a job interview.
Yeah.
And I got the job.
Talent coordinator, right?
Yeah. And then when she left, I got the job to produce the whole show.
Yeah. Yeah, when she and Edgar left.
Yeah.
So you got to tell me, because you never hear anybody come right out and say it, and they're both gone now. God bless her. But Edgar, was he a big asshole?
I loved him.
Did you?
Seriously. Here's why nobody liked Edgar. Because
I got to know.
Because he did not fit in Los Angeles. He was a London/New York guy in a place where everything was
What did he do for a living before he had her?
He produced very fancy documentaries for the UN.
Really?
Yeah. For the United Nations. He was that kind of guy, South African, and very rigid, very formal, wore a suit and tie all the time, had no neck.
Whenever I saw her on Carson and they would cut to him in the wings, he always looked like a stiff.
He's the kind of guy who would correct your grammar.
Right.
That kind of guy. But I loved him because probably in LA where everybody was so groovy, man, he was a nice sort of balance.
Truthful guy? Truthful when he talked to you?
Yeah, absolutely. We got along great. Yeah. And I was very, very sad when he killed himself.
Now, do you think that Carson tried to destroy her from the back of the room?
I think that Carson... Yes, I think that's his job. He was being competitive.
I'm not saying
we couldn't go after anybody who was on NBC. No, they were. But this is part of show business. Everything's.
But how pissed was he that she didn't tell him she was getting a show?
Probably incredibly pissed. That's what I certainly heard.
Yeah, because she was the permanent guest host at the time.
Yes, but supposedly there was a list drawn up of people that would be taking over when he retired, and she wasn't on the list.
Yeah, I believe that.
So
I don't believe. By the way, when before he left, I'm not entirely sure Leno was on that list because I don't think Carson had a lot of use for him.
Maybe that may be true too.
I think Carson really believed Letterman was going to take that show. I think he believed he should. I don't know if he thought he was definitely going to be able to do it.
Carson had a lot of sway. He had a lot of pull.
Oh,
so I don't know whether that's true or not, but I can tell you that. Yeah, of course, Carson worked hard to maximize his show and minimize her show. It's a different network. It's competitive. Get this, even when Letterman and Carson were on the same network, were on NBC together, they fought like cats and dogs
over
guests. That was the same network.
Yeah, but that comes down to the producers,
when people say
too.
But when people say to me, "Oh, that's really bad of you to tell comics they shouldn't play your competitor," it's like, come on, this is what show business is all about.
I'm glad you brought that up because how do you feel
I'm not.
No, but how do you feel about that today? There are guys
same way
who are playing other clubs And are they welcome at Yuk Yuk's?
Probably not.
Not if they're in the same city.
Not, well, we're in all the different. We're in every city.
Okay.
Except Winnipeg and the place out in.
Well, what's the rule, Mark? Like you can only play it after you've been at the other place 2 months ago, or you can't come at all?
Realistically,
yeah.
You sign a contract with Yuk Yuk's. Everything goes through Yuk Yuk's, and we warrant to put you in all our clubs at least twice a year.
So guys are signing contracts now.
I have 158 comics signed to contracts, exclusive contracts.
Well, contract's a different story.
Yeah.
How come I've never been offered one?
Because you left before we went the contract route.
Okay, well, I would like one.
Okay, we'll certainly talk about that.
I'd like one.
Okay.
I'd like to get a contract.
Okay, well, we'll book you without a contract, as long as you don't go and play the competition. There's also, you know what?
By the way, I've never.
I know that. But it's also a Swiss cheese contract. There's all kinds of examples of places you can play and you can do. Like, for instance, you can do the comedy bar because we really don't find it competitive. But you can't do Absolute because it's exactly what we do.
Yeah, it is. It's the same type of thing. I mean, they're even in one of your old locations.
That's right. So, but again, it's a Swiss cheese contract. There's all kinds of places you can play. We even encourage you to play.
Of course, that you can hate the guy who owns the club you're working in, and you can say, well, I'm not going to work at that club anymore, or any club with that name, and I'm going to go somewhere else. But you're going to have another club owner whose goals and aspirations are the same as the club you just left.
True, but nobody has the number of clubs I have.
And you're going to cut down on the number of clubs.
But here's what you can do now, which you couldn't do before. If you wanted to, and you had the energy, and some comics do, you just rent out rooms,
Theater,
a nightclub, and you promote it yourself. This is how the comedy bar works. They don't pay you. They've never paid a comic a dime. What they do is they give you the opportunity. Here's an 80-seat room. We'll take 20% of the door. You get the other 80%. You fill it. Right. And if you fill it, great. You make money. If you don't fill it, you don't make money. So there's a lot of stuff like that goes around now.
Well, it's it's all give and take. I mean, in my case, I had a full-time job the whole time I was there until I got a TV show. And for me, Yuk Yuk served a purpose for me as well because, well, wait a minute, I'm going to go play such and such, and it's a flight, and it's a hotel. I don't do any of that. Yuk Yuk does that for me.
That's unique in the business.
It is unique because, and even though I'm in a major city doing a big club, I'm getting 250 a show as opposed to 50 for a showcase.
Look, Mike, I'm really proud of the way that I've organized my company, and I know that it's controversial, and it was controversial from the day I started it to vertically integrate an agency with a club system. However, it's not the only way for people to make it work. It's our way. And one really positive thing about it is you don't have to waste time making phone calls to all these different places and setting up your own. That's a big deal. And it is a big deal because really what you should be doing as a creative artist is writing, creating, performing, not necessarily making posters.
And listen, this isn't me sucking up because I don't do it, but I'm just telling you.
No, I know.
When somebody's got 18, 20 clubs and you're good and they're going to book you every week, what the fuck is your beef?
The beef is not now with people who are doing that. The beef is with people who can't get in because I only have a limited number of people I can service. It's a pie, Mike. I can only cut the pie so many times
and you can't
before somebody's going to get crushed.
What are the politics? What are the politics with amateur night now? Are there any?
No. Anybody plays anywhere they can.
Same deal.
And I just encourage everybody to go everywhere they possibly can and get better.
Yeah. One of the things that helped me a lot and helped a lot of guys who came up with me, including Brent Butt, was Garbo's.
Garbo's. Yeah.
Remember the back room at Garbo's?
Yeah, I sure do.
Remember you rented that place? And that was for guys like us who were on the fringe of going to weekends, but we weren't quite ready yet. So we went to Garbo's on Friday and Saturday night and did that place, and it was fantastic.
It was junior A hockey.
It was like a farm team for Yuk Yuk.
And it was good junior A hockey.
Yeah, that place made me, that and the Mississauga Club. I mean, I was always on there, and I was always on at Garbo's. And that was an amazing thing to see. I mean, I don't imagine financially it makes any sense today. Not with the price of real estate in downtown Toronto, even when you're renting.
We would do it if we had an enormous spillover, but we find that having the 300 seats in the downtown club is 600 seats on a Saturday night. If we had a demand for another 300 seats, we'd find somewhere, but we don't.
Are you happy now?
Well, what kind of a question is that to ask a Jew?
I know. That's why I'm asking.
Jeez.
Are you?
I don't know. Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Sure.
Well, you got a beautiful wife. You got a beautiful son with the waspiest name on earth, by the way. It's like you think the Nazis are coming back. What's the kid's name? Jackson?
I'm going to send him to the door. You know, when we're looking for the Jews. And then Jackson shows up. They look at him with his blonde hair and his blue eyes. And they'll say, there's no Jews here. Let's go to the next door.
He's what, 9 now?
He'll be 9 in 2 weeks.
Like, and you're 67.
Yeah.
What's that like?
Tough. It's really exhausting. But you know, what you lose in energy, you gain in wisdom.
Yeah.
So you work smart, you don't work hard. You've heard these things before.
Well, the only guys I know who did it were you and Letterman.
Yeah. Well,
the only guys I knew who were like 7 years away from their pension who had kids.
And Picasso, who was the first guy that
I didn't know him.
To do that. You weren't close?
Never met him.
Oh. More of a naturalist then than an abstraction. Okay, fine. Jeff Goldblum.
He did it too?
Tony Randall.
I know. Oh, you're right. Tony Randall did do it, yeah.
And these are famous people, but there were 2 people in my high school class that did exactly what I did. Alan Zweig, who's the filmmaker, and my friend Bram Cadsby, who's an economist. And they had kids late in their lives.
Yeah. What kind of changes did you make? I mean, I can remember when you used to buy shirts, when they got dirty, you'd throw them out. You can't do that anymore.
There's some economic impact, but actually what really changes is you just can't go out like you used to. I used to be out 7 nights a week, and now I don't want to. When this is finished, when this discussion we're having is finished, I can't wait to go home because I want to make sure I'm home in time to tuck him in.
Right. Now, is it bullshit that it makes you a better person?
Yeah, I think so. I think if you're a lousy person, you'll be lousy to your kid.
No, but I mean, has it changed the way you view people you deal with on a daily basis now that you have a kid?
No.
Not at all?
No.
Really?
Didn't change my politics, didn't change my comedy, didn't change the things you're talking about. What it changed was it gave me somebody to love all the time that wanted very little from me. You see, your child wants Lego and your wife wants a house.
Yeah.
Way easier to satisfy your child. So when people say to me, fatherhood is tough, I think, fatherhood's not that tough.
Yeah.
The other stuff is tough.
It's incredible how much he looks like it.
Well,
there's no DNA test necessary, I'm telling you.
No, but he's like a kind of Breslin 2.0. He's blonde. He's got blue eyes.
Oh, yeah, he looks like Hitler Youth. There's no doubt about that. But he does have the same shaped face as you. He's got a lot of your features.
He has my wife's coloring and my sense of panic.
Yeah, okay. That's perfect. Perfect. All right, buddy, I can't think of anything else I want to ask you.
You want to ask me why I named him Jackson?
You know, I already made an assumption, but go ahead.
Who do you think we named him after?
Well, it is my mother's maiden name.
There you go. No, Jackson Pollock.
Get out of here. Why?
Well,
big fan of his?
I am, but because Jackson,
I'm pretty sure your kid could paint like him at 5.
He did, and in fact, his diaper looked like Pollock in his olive phase. We named him Jackson. Well, first of all, because it sounds good. It's kind of a rugged name, Jackson. It's got a name of the American.
It is a cool name.
American West, right? But we named him Jackson because we named him after Jackson Pollock because we think Jackson Pollock was kind of the harbinger of the 20th century because he saw chaos in everything, and that's what happened. His paintings looked like a nuclear explosion going off. He knew something. Great artists know it without even knowing it. But the real reason is because there's a thing in Judaism that your firstborn child should be named after an alcoholic womanizer. And that's why we gave it to him. Also, there's something else in that Jackson, his name is actually Jackson Richard Breslin. Richard was after kind of my father, whose name was Reuben. So that was kind of where the R came from. So Jackson Richard, if you break it down into the slang, it's Jack, right? And what does Richard break down into? Dick.
Rick.
Dick. Right? So he's Jack Dick.
See, I don't do those jokes.
Well,
Rick.
Okay. Well, can I not do that on this?
Yeah, you can do it.
All right. So Jack Dick, because what do I do most of the time? Exactly.
Nice admission at the end, pal.
Thanks.
All right, buddy.
Save the best for last, Mike.
Thanks for coming, pal.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Mark Breslin, everybody.
You're listening to U2 with Mike Bullard on the Possibly Correct Network. Legendary comedian Mike Bullard is back. Stay up to date with the latest from Mike and the podcast by following us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Minds.com and Gab, or navigate to www.u2mikebullard.com. While you're online, please show your support for the show by leaving a review on your favourite media player. You can check out all of our podcasts by following Possibly Correct on Minds.com.